up to mentorship plan, which is for 12 months and will cost you 50,000. The basic is for 15,000 and the standard one is for 30,000. You can avail extra 20% off by using my promo code as displayed on the screen. Then telling you briefly about the internal exam marathon. That is, it is specifically oriented towards your exam. So this consists of rapid revision of all important questions. All volatile facts will be covered. Multiple MCQs will be covered so that we ensure you top-notch grades. So without wasting much time, let's begin with today's class. So we've already done the cycles. Okay, all the important cycles have already been taken. Then we've also dealt with the chemistry of carbohydrates. This chemistry is specifically oriented towards your viva and practical questions. Then today we'll be talking about isomerism and GAGs. And with this, we will come to an end of carbohydrates. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's begin with isomerism and carbohydrates. So isomerism is of two types: structural isomerism, which is also known as stereoisomerism, and optical isomerism. Your structural isomerism, it is where the compound has the same molecular formula but is different in structures. Okay, so your molecular formula remains same molecular formula, but what is different? The structural formula is different. And what is optical isomerism? It is the difference in rotation of plane polarized light. So difference in rotation of plane polarized light, that is whether the plane polarized light is being rotated towards the left or the right. Depending upon that difference, you have optical isomers, and depending upon the structural differences, you have structural isomers. Okay. So those compounds which have the same molecular formula, they have different orientation or there's difference in structures, they are your stereoisomers. Now, before we begin with the isomerism, let's talk about asymmetric carbon atom, or also known as chiral carbon. Now, what is asymmetric carbon atom? That is the 4 valencies of your carbon. We all know that carbon has 4 valencies. Okay, so all the 4 valencies of carbon, it is occupied by 4 different groups. Okay, so that becomes your chiral carbon. When the 4 valencies of carbon are being occupied by 4 different groups, then we say that that carbon is either asymmetric carbon atom or chiral carbon. Now here, let's begin with the example of glucose. You can see this is the open chain structure of glucose. So in the straight chain structure of glucose, it says that it has 4 asymmetric carbon atoms. That is your carbon 2, 3, 4, and 5. That says 4 asymmetric, and which are they? 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, why is this carbon 1 not an asymmetric carbon? Because you can see the carbon 1 is bound with, it is double bounded with oxygen. So it will not satisfy the rule of 4 different groups being bound. Okay, so you have this group, this becomes one group, this becomes one group, and this oxygen is same for the third and fourth. So they are not 4 different groups satisfying the 4 different valencies. Therefore, your carbon 1 in open chain structure of glucose is not a chiral carbon or asymmetric carbon. Now, carbon 2, let's go on to carbon 2. Now, this carbon 2, you can see this carbon 2, you can see this is one group, this becomes other group, this becomes one group, and this becomes one group. So you can see that there are 4 different groups. This is the first group, this is the second group, this is the third group, and this is the fourth group. So your second carbon is a chiral carbon in straight chain. Similarly, your third, fourth, and fifth, they are all chiral carbons. So your second, third, fourth, and fifth, they're all chiral carbons. Now, your 6th carbon, that is this one, this is not chiral carbon because you can see it has 2 hydrogens. So, 4 different groups are not present. Therefore, this one is not a chiral carbon. Now moving on to the ring structure of glucose, we had discussed that glucose basically exists in the ring form. So in the ring form, it says that it has 5 asymmetric carbon atoms. That is your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now 1 is also included. Let us have a look how this is your carbon 1. Okay. So it has one group. This is one group. This is second group. I'll change the color of the pen. Okay. So this is your carbon 1. This is one group. This is second group. This is third group. And this is the fourth group. So you can see 4 different groups are attached to this carbon here. So your carbon 1 is chiral carbon in ring form, okay, in ring form and not in open chain form. 99% of glucose exists in ring form. We all know that glucose in solution exists in ring form. Now, let's go on to fructose. So in fructose, in the open chain structure, the number of asymmetric carbons are your 3, that is your 3, 4, and 5. Now, similarly, here you can see this carbon 1, it has 2 hydrogen. So this is not a chiral carbon. Then again, your carbon 2, it is double bonded with oxygen. So again, it is not a chiral carbon because it is not satisfying the rule of 4 different groups being bound. Now your carbon 3, 4, and 5. They are all chiral carbons. And then again, your carbon 6, it has 2 hydrogens. So again, it is not a chiral carbon. So that was speaking about the open chain structure of fructose. Now moving on to the ring structure of fructose, we can see it says that in the ring form, the asymmetric carbon atom, you can see carbon 2, that is the functional carbon is also asymmetric, and then you have 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is your carbon 2. You can see one group, you can see the second group, this is the third group, and this is the fourth group. So in the ring structure of fructose, you have 4 asymmetric carbons, whereas in the straight chain structure, you have 3 asymmetric carbon atoms. Now let us see what does label Van 't Hout rule says. It says if you know the number of asymmetric carbon atoms, that is the chiral carbon, you can calculate the number of possible structural isomers. Okay. So the formula for this is the number of structural isomers is equal to 2 to the power n, where n is the number of asymmetric carbon. Let's take the example of glucose. Okay. Now for glucose, it will be 2 to the power if we take the open chain structure. You have, see it says 4 asymmetric carbon atoms. Okay. So it will be 2 to the power 4. And this we are talking about open chain. So 2 to the power 4 will be 16. Okay, 4 times 2, that is 16. So you have 16 structural isomers. But if you talk about the ring form of glucose, then it will be 2 to the power 5. And you get 32 structural isomers. Now I ask you, if there's a question like, what is the number of structural isomers of glucose? And you have the options. In the options, you have 16, 32, 8, and 4. These are your options. Okay, now tell me quickly in the comments that which one will you mark? It's going to be 16, 32, or 8 or 4. Now 8 and 4, it's definitely out of the question. Okay, fine. Now, many of you are confused in 16 and 32 because you must be thinking the open chain has 16, the ring structure has 32. Now, what should we mark? But we have already discussed that 99% of glucose exists in ring form. So, if you have 32 and 16 both in the option, your answer will be 32. But if 32 is not there, then your answer will be 16. Okay. So sometimes you have to choose the answer depending upon the options available. The best answer will be chosen. Okay. Now moving on to structural isomers of monosaccharides. So you have 3 different types of structural isomerism. That is difference in orientation of H and OH groups in the penultimate carbon of the reference carbon atom. So it says that in enantiomers or DL isomerisms, what is there? There is difference in orientation of hydrogen and hydroxyl groups. Okay. In the penultimate carbon, what is there? There is difference in orientation of hydrogen and hydroxyl groups. Okay. In the penultimate carbon, what is there? There is difference in orientation of hydrogen and okay. Orientation of hydrogen and hydroxyl groups in the penultimate carbon or the reference carbon, it leads to D or L isomers. Okay. Now, only for definition sake, we say that there is difference in orientation only in the penultimate carbon. Okay. Your carbon 5 is considered to be the penultimate carbon, but actually there is difference, although there is difference in orientation of hydroxyl and hydrogen even in C2, C3, C4 also. Okay. Now, DNL isomers, they are mirror images and also known as enantiomers. With the help of the diagram, I'll explain it to you so it will become even more clear. Now, this is your penultimate carbon. This. So it says that there is difference in orientation in the penultimate. This is reference carbon. that we say there is difference in orientation of hydroxyl and hydrogen in the penultimate carbon. But if you take a closer look, you can see that this is C2, this is C3, and this is C4. So there is Okay. Wi-Fi giving really hard time. So welcome back. Let's continue from D and L isomers. So I'll take this all again because there was a lot of disturbance because of the Wi-Fi. Really sorry for the inconvenience. So D and L isomers. So we were talking about that by definition it says that there is difference in orientation of H and OH groups in the penultimate carbon. Although this is only for the sake of definition that we use the term penultimate carbon or the reference carbon. Although there is difference in orientation of hydroxyl and hydrogen even in carbon 2, 3 and 4. Now your D and L isomers, there are mirror images of each other and are known as enantiomers. So we will understand this more clearly with the help of a diagram. Okay, so this is your carbon 5, C5. So your C5 is known as penultimate or reference carbon. Okay, so you can see there is difference in orientation of hydroxyl and hydrogen. In D-glucose, you can see your hydroxyl is on the right side, whereas in L-glucose, you can see your hydroxyl is on the left and your hydrogen is on the right. So there is difference in orientation in the penultimate carbon, and also you can see in carbon 2, 3 and 4, there is difference in orientation. In carbon 2, D-glucose, the hydroxyl is on the right, whereas you can see in L, the hydrogen is on the right. Similarly, you can see difference in orientation in carbon 3 and in carbon 4 as well. So, although there is difference in orientation in carbon 2, 3, 4, but for definition's sake, only for the sake of definition, we refer that there is difference in orientation in the penultimate or the reference carbon. So, your D and L glucose or your enantiomers, as we say, they are mirror image. If you put a mirror in between, they are exactly the mirror image. You can appreciate this. Okay, so they are mirror images. Okay, now the question arises that if there is orientation in carbon 2, 3 and 4 as well, then why do we only talk about penultimate or the reference carbon in the definition? Because we all know that our glyceraldehyde, which is considered as the parent carbohydrate, it only has one carbon here, which is the reference carbon. So in glyceraldehyde, there is difference in orientation in the penultimate carbon. So because of that, we say that there is difference in orientation in the penultimate carbon, but your other carbohydrates, they are not just 3 carbon long, like your hexoses and all, they have more carbons. So therefore, there is found orientation in carbon 2, 3 and 4 as well, or if there are like less carbon or more carbon in there. But because it was first discovered in glyceraldehyde and it is the parent carbohydrate which only has reference carbon, so therefore in the definition we only talk about penultimate. So don't get confused by that, it is a misnomer. Now moving on to anumerism. So isomerism at functional carbon atom. Okay. So in aldoses that has aldehyde group, so functional group is attached to carbon 1. So in aldoses, your functional carbon is carbon 1. And in ketoses, your functional carbon is carbon 2. Now, examples of anumerism are alpha and beta fructose, alpha and beta glucose. Let's understand this with the help of a diagram. So this is your alpha glucose in here. This is your beta glucose. Now you can see this is the functional carbon 1. So in alpha form, your hydroxyl group is below the plane. Whereas in your beta, you can see this hydroxyl group is above the plane. So based on the positioning of the hydroxyl group, whether it is above or below the plane, you have alpha and beta forms. Remember, we were talking about alpha and beta linkages. So if the compound that are being linked, they are both in alpha formations, then you have alpha linkages, and if one is in alpha and one is in beta, you have alpha beta linkages, and if both are in beta, then you have beta linkages. Then moving on to mutual rotation, the property of anomeric carbon. So this is the property of anomeric carbon. There is change in rotation of plane polarized light with time. Okay. Now, alpha glucose has a mutual rotation of 112 degrees and beta glucose has a mutual rotation of 19 degrees. And at equilibrium, the net rotation is of 52 degrees. So initially, if alpha form is high, the rotation is 112 degrees, and if beta form is high, then it is 19 degrees. And once they come at equilibrium, it is 52 degrees. So it is a reversible reaction. Reversible reaction, as your alpha form can change into beta and beta form can change into alpha, and at equilibrium your rotation will be 52 degrees, and when your alpha concentration is high, then and when beta concentration is high, it will be rotated by 19 degrees. Therefore we say that there is change in rotation of plane polarized light with time, which is known as mutual rotation. So this is happening because of mutual rotation, that there is a change in the rotation of plane polarized light, which is depending upon the zero. Why? Because there is equimolar mixture of optical
Ma'am,
isomers.
1 second, ma'am.
So the final rotation is zero.
Okay.
Now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, I passed recording. I'll start recording now. Okay. Both the devices connected. Everything is fine, ma'am. Okay, 1 second, ma'am. Yeah, you can start, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Now moving on to epimers. Let's talk about epimers. What are they? Isomerism at a single carbon other than the functional and the penultimate carbon. Okay. So we've already spoken about the penultimate and the functional carbon. Now it is saying that isomerism at only a single carbon. Other than the condition being it should not be the functional carbon and the penultimate carbon. So what are they? That is at carbons 2, it will be glucose and mannose. The epimers will be glucose and mannose. If the isomerism is at carbon 3, then it will be glucose and allose. And at carbon 4, it will be glucose and galactose. With the help of diagrams, it will be more clear. See, if you see, have a look at D-glucose and D-mannose. So it says that carbon 2. You can see this is carbon 2. Now, you can see at carbon 2 in D-glucose, the hydroxyl is on the right, whereas in D-mannose, hydrogen is on the right. And you can see the other hydroxyl and oxygen orientation at the rest of the carbons, that is at carbon 2, 3, and 4, they're all the same. So, these are what? These are epimers. That is, there is difference in orientation of hydrogen and oxygen only at single carbon. So in this case, what is that single carbon? It is C2 in the case of glucose and mannose. Now, moving on to glucose and galactose, you can see it is at carbon 4. This is your carbon 4 here. This is your carbon 4 here. Now you can see there is difference in orientation at carbon 4. At rest of the carbon, you can see the hydrogen and the hydroxyl, they are oriented in similar manner. So your D-glucose and D-galactose are epimers at carbon 4. At carbon, so for being epimers, they are single carbon. Okay. Okay. So moving on to diastereo. Now there is
Ma'am,
Yeah,
shall we reschedule the class to Sunday? Otherwise?
yeah, I don't know what's wrong. It says an unknown error has occurred. Please join this meeting and it's disconnecting.
Yeah,
If
it
this
is happening continuously, no, ma'am. Disconnected
is,
and connecting back. Today
happening?
we'll do one thing, ma'am. Ma'am, uh,
Is it happening at your end also?
ma'am,
Is it happening at your end also, or is it happening only at my side?
oh,
Connecting and disconnecting.
connecting and disconnecting happening at your end only, ma'am. There is no problem at admin side.
At
There
your
is no
end.
issue. There is no issue,
Okay.
ma'am. And even Sarath sir also, he got connected properly and he is not getting disconnected. Student review,
But
Kavya
my
ma'am.
Wi-Fi signals are full,
Only your devices are getting disconnected, ma'am.
and both my devices are
Yes,
getting
yes, yes.
disconnected.
Both the device.
Yeah.
Ma'am, one thing we'll do. Today class will reschedule to Sunday.
Okay.
Sunday evening at your preferred time. And today, in next 5 minutes, another class will start, ma'am.
Yeah, which,
If possible, night after 9 o'clock, we will perform a speed test on the device, ma'am. We'll check the internet speed once.
okay. But
What
I
best we
use the
can.
same Wi-Fi for watching YouTube videos and Netflix and all. It's working. That's absolutely fine. I don't know. Is it some issue with Zoom? Like Zoom is crashing? Can it be that?
But other there is no issue with other educators, ma'am.
Yeah.
Newly joined Divya ma'am, there is no issue, ma'am. Her class is going fine
I
only
think
without disconnection. I mean to say without disconnection. And
I think since I moved here to
uh,
Lucknow,
only
only
the intermittent issue is happening with this class only, ma'am.
yeah,
That is the
as long
only
as I
issue we
was
have. Getting connected and disconnected continuously. That's the main issue, ma'am.
I'm teaching and then I realize okay, I'm disconnected.
Even you will also get tense if it happens multiple times. What is happening at
Yeah.
mine? Yeah. So one thing we'll do, ma'am. Today class will reschedule to Sunday, and
Okay.
why? Because only 5 minutes is there. Another class will start,
Yeah.
and
Okay. And this was supposed to be the last class for carbohydrates. Okay. So I don't have any other classes now.
no, that we will speak again, ma'am. If you want to take class before Sunday, that we will check with Sarath sir actually. Schedule Sarath sir will prepare.
Okay. Okay.
That we
Okay.
can check it tomorrow, or now you can check it after this class.
I don't have a class tomorrow. That is first. I have a class on second. Then I have a class on fourth Saturday.
Okay.
So I don't have a class tomorrow. We'll see if we can do it tomorrow. So
One minute, man.
it'll
Checking
be
the.
like the children, yeah. The students will not get confused. From lipid, they'll be jumping back to carbohydrate again.
Uh, so you want to continue on tomorrow, ma'am?
Yeah, if I can take it tomorrow.
Tomorrow we have a slot 6 to 8, 7 p.m.
Okay, then no issues. I'll take it on Sunday because other classes will
Actually,
start.
tomorrow is not possible. We can take on Friday or Sunday, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. No issues.
Friday, yes, sir. Tomorrow means, sir, 6 to 7. There is a no, slot, right? 6 to 7.
Actually, we got information that there should be only one class per day, but I have scheduled two class.
Okay, okay, fine, fine.
Yeah.
Acha, acha. In that case, better, sir will let you know, ma'am. Huh?
Okay, okay.
Next available
No
slot,
issues.
he will let you know. He'll check the schedules and everything.
Okay.
Uh, one
Thank you.
thing, when can we call you back, ma'am, to perform a speed test? Or
Maybe sometime we might
how many minutes? 3 minutes time is there, ma'am. Can you do one thing, ma'am? Now you can do. Just open
try again.
www dot. Otherwise, we'll do it later, ma'am. The other class will start within 3 minutes.
Okay, okay, we'll do it later. Yeah.
Ma'am can send a screenshot, like she can do the.
No, sir. We will guide. Tomorrow we'll guide her.
Yeah.
Huh? Fine, sir. Fine, sir. Huh? Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Bye, bye. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Bye.